Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire.
Oh, you're trying to bring me down and run me out of town. You're taking what you want, but you can't take my rhythm now. I'm walking to my own beat, just gonna be me. I'm not replicating nobody.
This is an easy giveaway when you use this one story about Peter getting out of the boat. And they always emphasize the part where he starts sinking. I'm going, you're crazy. He was the only one in history that we know of that could say he walked on water with Jesus. He's the only guy that you could say he got out of the boat. Do you know what kind of courage it took? Number one, they thought it was a ghost walking across the water with them. They thought, oh my goodness, they were absolutely terrified because they were in a storm. Jesus had stayed back. And they looked out and they said, is it possible that it's him? The more they looked, in spite of their terror. And so Peter, now he's known to be a big mouth sort of a guy. He was really a leader, and he was a pretty courageous guy before he met Jesus because he did some really crazy things, from my understanding. Plus, he was a fisherman, and I think he led his brothers or his people to fish. But he starts yelling out, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come out. Tell me to come out there with you." And you see Jesus saying to him, come on. And I started thinking about that today. The wind is blowing. The waves are crashing. The boat is rocking back and forth. I think Jesus was shouting at Peter, come on, so they could hear, So I think it was even more dramatic than we even thought. And I think in that moment, Peter said, it's do or die, man. I'm out. And he steps out of the boat and he starts walking on water. He knows what it feels like for his feet to touch water on a lake and his feet stay on top. Maybe that's where the first, wakeboarding came from. I don't know. Skis, I don't know. Maybe that's what we thought later we could do this. He stepped out of the boat and he walked on water toward Jesus. He said, then he took his eyes off and he started sinking. And he said, Lord, help me. And Jesus grabs him and lifts him back in the boat. But let me tell you something. There's 11 people in the back. There's 11 people left in the boat. They didn't get out. They didn't even call out to Jesus going, tell me if it's you to come on out. I want to walk with you. This is amazing. Instead, in their fear, they clung to the boat, which is what most of us would have done. But I'm so tired of hearing these things. Yes, he took his eyes off of Jesus. What are you talking about? We all take our eyes off of Jesus. Jesus is telling us to come on over and over and over again with something. You know it. You know when I'm telling you this, that this is true. That you've said, Lord, I want to do this with you, and I see you doing this stuff. Lord, if it's you, tell me to do it or help me to. And I got a feeling many of you have heard God say, come on. And then you would shrink back in fear going, I don't know. Maybe it's not God. Maybe you second guess yourself. You talk yourselves out of it. They told me when I started this podcast, some of the great guys, and they were not Christian guys. A Christian guy taught me about podcasting and doing it. But it was one of the secular guys, and several of them that were out there that were really training and talking about it. And he said, the number one thing that keeps people, everyone says they're going to start a podcast. Everybody says they're going to start a show. They're going to do this thing, and oh man, it's going to be magnificent. We're going to do all these great things. He said, but most of them will start to pull the trigger, but they will never pull the trigger. They will never launch their podcast. They're going to think about it. They're going to talk about it. They're going to come up with a title. They're going to talk about all the people they're going to interview, all the things they're going to say, but they never buy the site. You have to get it set up. You have to come up with a name. You've got to either do a solo gig and start recording, or you've got to interview people, and then You've got to put it on and you got to press go, and then it has to launch. I wrote 70 people, and I remember when I pressed send to the text, I just about had a heart attack. I mean, I was just like, I did it. Oh no, I've asked them to be a part of this. And oh no, now they're going to. And they started signing up. Because I knew when Michael Helms walked into that Wendy's where Jim Basinski and I met every week at some restaurant, and Wendy's became the place for many, many years. When Michael told me about this, I'd never heard of it. I knew it was for me. It was something I could do to help get the books out that I'd written. But that was the purpose. And then the podcast took a life of its own. But when he's told me what it does and what it was about, I knew it was something I could do. And now we're way over 200. But we had to step out of the boat. We had to say go. We had to push send. We had to say yes. We had to step out of the boat. Now, this is a small step out compared to Peter on water. But I want you to know that the rest of them stayed in the boat even after he got out. Even when they saw him walking on water. None of the rest of them said, hey, what about me? What about me? No, they just stayed. So when you think about Peter walking on water and you think about him, starting to sink, forget that. I mean, Jesus didn't forget it. He talks about it. He got back on the boat and he said, oh, you have little faith. People keep saying he's talking to Peter. He probably was. But I think he was even more talking to the guys who didn't get out of the boat in the first place, the other 11. Why didn't you have the faith like Peter did? At least get out. Peter, why didn't you have the faith? You already knew what it was like to walk on water. Keep going. But the bottom line is there are many who will get out. But the reason that many won't get out is because of the boat and won't take the step of faith to do what God wants them to do is because they're afraid of failure. They're afraid, what if God doesn't come through? They're afraid about what if I look like a fool? Well, guess what? There's going to be times that you're going to feel like God's not coming through. Anybody will, because your faith will be tested. The second thing is there are always going to be people laugh at you, scoff at you, say bad things about you. But there are going to be more people that always go, wow, he stepped out of the boat. Wow, I'm going to follow him, her, them, because they did what God told them to do, and now we can see it. You usually can't see what was real and what God is doing till you're down the road a ways. So do this. Step out of the boat. Don't worry about whether you're going to sink or swim. Say to yourself, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come on. And when you sense or hear him say, come on, then get out and do whatever it is that God's telling you to do. All right, see you next time on Youth Worker on Fire.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.